The year was 1581. Deep in the mountains of feudal Japan, a samurai lord believed he was untouchable. His fortress stood on a steep hillside. Stone walls surrounded every entrance. More than 300 armed samurai guarded the gates. Every bridge was watched. Every tower was manned. No stranger could enter, at least. That's what everyone believed. That night. The guards heard nothing. No horses, no footsteps, no battle cries, only the wind moving through the pine trees. Before dawn, one of the guards opened the commander's chamber. The candles were still burning. His armor rested untouched. His sword remained in its stand. But the commander was dead. No signs of a struggle. No broken windows. No forced doors. Nothing had been stolen. The only thing left behind was a small piece of black cloth. Within days, a rumor spread across Japan. The ninja had come. For centuries, stories like this traveled from village to village. Some claimed the ninja could disappear into smoke. Others believed they could walk across water. Many insisted they possessed supernatural powers. But here's the truth. History tells a very different story. The real ninja didn't rely on magic. They relied on something far more dangerous: patience. And that patience would change the fate of Japan forever. Welcome to Warrior Legacy. Tonight, we uncover the secrets. History almost erased. To understand the ninja, you must first understand the world they lived in. Japan was not one peaceful nation. It was divided. Dozens of powerful warlords, known as daimi, fought endless wars for land, power, and survival. Villages burned, castles changed hands, alliances lasted only until someone stronger appeared. Every leader wanted one thing: information. Who would attack next? Where were the enemy's soldiers? Which ally could still be trusted? Winning a battle often depended on knowing the answer before anyone else. And that created an opportunity, not for the strongest warriors, but for the smartest. Far away from the great castles, hidden among the rugged mountains of Iga and Koga, a different kind of fighter was being born. They didn't seek fame. They didn't wear bright armor. Most people would never recognize them. Because if you could recognize a ninja, he had already failed. But who were these mysterious people? Were they assassins, spies, or something history has misunderstood for centuries? The answer begins. In two forgotten mountain provinces where survival mattered more than honor. The mountains of Iga and Koga were unlike the rest of Japan. There were no grand palaces, no glittering courts, no armies marching through the streets, only steep forests, narrow valleys, and villages that survived by relying on each other. Life here was difficult. Every winter tested endurance. Every harvest determined survival. Children learned to climb cliffs before they learned to write. They could recognize animal tracks, predict rain by the smell of the wind, and travel through dense forests without leaving visible footprints. These weren't military schools. They were survival schools. And over generations, those survival skills evolved into something far more dangerous. Not warriors. Observers, the people of Iga, understood a simple truth. A man who sees everything rarely needs to fight. While the mountains remained isolated, the rest of Japan was drowning in conflict. Powerful daimi competed for land. Every alliance was temporary. Every promise could be broken. Trust became more valuable than gold. But trust was disappearing. One betrayal could destroy an entire army. One secret could decide the fate of a kingdom. That is why information became the most valuable weapon in Japan. Not arrows, not swords. Information. The samurai were trained to win battles. The shinobi were trained to prevent them. or make victory inevitable before the first sword was drawn. Intelligence operatives' modern movies often portray every ninja as an assassin. History paints a much broader picture. Many shinobi spent weeks, sometimes months, inside enemy territory without drawing a weapon. They entered castles disguised as merchants. They listened inside crowded markets. They watched troop movements from distant hills. They counted supplies entering city gates. They memorized guard rotations. Every small detail mattered, because one accurate report could save hundreds of lives. A commander who knew where the enemy would attack already possessed a powerful advantage. That was the true strength of the shinobi. They gathered knowledge, while everyone else searched for glory. Most people believe success comes from acting first. The shinobi believed success came from understanding first. They watched. They listened. They waited. Only then did they move. In today's world, that lesson is just as powerful. Many people rush into decisions. Very few pause long enough to understand the situation completely. Sometimes, patience is not weakness. It is preparation. And preparation often decides the outcome, long before action begins. Unlike the samurai, the shinobi left behind very few written records. Their knowledge wasn't taught publicly. It passed from teacher to student, from parent to child. Much of it was never written down at all. Why? Because a written secret can be stolen. A remembered secret dies only with its keeper. They trained memory, observation, balance, night movement, disguise, escape, navigation, survival. Each skill alone seemed ordinary. Together, they created a warrior unlike any the world had seen. Not stronger, not faster, but harder to predict. By the late 1500s, the reputation of the shinobi had spread across Japan. Some warlords wanted to hire them. Others feared them, but one man believed they threatened his dream of uniting Japan. His name was Oda Nobunaga. And what he did next nearly erased the ninja from history forever. By the late 16th century, one name echoed across every battlefield in Japan: Oda Nobunaga. To some, he was a visionary. To others, he was a ruthless conqueror. His dream was simple: unite Japan under one ruler. But there was one problem: the mountains of Iga. Unlike other provinces, Iga refused to bow. It had no powerful daimyo controlling every village. Its people governed themselves. They answered to no lord, and among those villages lived the shinobi. For Nobunaga, this was more than rebellion. It was an insult. A land beyond his control could become a safe haven for his enemies, and as long as the shinobi remained free, no secret, no army, and no castle would ever be truly secure. So he made a decision: not to negotiate, not to intimidate, but to erase Iga from the map. In 1579, Nobunaga sent thousands of soldiers into the mountains. His generals expected an easy victory. The numbers were overwhelming: professional samurai, superior weapons, military experience. Everything pointed toward success. But they had made one fatal mistake. They believed they were entering ordinary territory. They weren't. They were entering the home of the shinobi. The mountain paths were unfamiliar. The forests were silent. Every turn concealed uncertainty. The invaders marched confidently. Then the attacks began. Not massive battles, not glorious duels. Small, precise, unexpected strikes. A scout disappeared. A supply convoy never arrived. Messengers vanished before reaching the next camp. Confusion spread faster than fear. The samurai searched for an enemy they could not see. Every shadow became suspicious. Every tree looked like a hiding place. The mountains themselves seemed alive. By the time Nobunaga's army realized what was happening, they had already lost control. The invasion collapsed. Not because the shinobi had a larger army, but because they controlled something far more powerful: the battlefield itself. Most people believe strength comes from size. The shinobi proved strength comes from understanding your environment better than your opponent. They never fought on the enemy's terms. They forced the enemy to fight on theirs. That principle still decides victories today. In business, in sports, in leadership, the smartest competitor rarely wins by copying others. He wins by creating conditions where his own strengths matter most. The shinobi mastered that idea centuries before the modern world gave it a name. When news of the defeat reached Nobunaga, he was furious. He had conquered powerful clans, captured mighty castles, broken legendary armies, yet a collection of mountain villages had humiliated him. He refused to accept it. History records that he made a terrifying decision: if he could not control Iga, he would destroy it. This time, he would not send thousands. He would send tens of thousands, an army so large that the mountains themselves would tremble. It would become one of the largest military operations in Japanese history, and for the shinobi, it would become the darkest chapter of their existence. In 1581, more than 40,000 soldiers marched toward Iga. The shinobi had never faced an army of that size. They knew they could not win a direct war, so they made one final decision. A decision that would transform the ninja from living warriors into living legends. The autumn of 1581 looked different. The forests of Iga were no longer silent. From every mountain pass came the sound of marching soldiers, not hundreds, not thousands, but an army so large that villagers believed the mountains themselves were moving. History remembers this campaign as the Second Iga War. Oda Nobunaga had learned from his earlier defeat. This time, he would not underestimate the shinobi. His generals attacked from multiple directions. Roads were blocked, escape routes were cut off, villages were surrounded. The goal was no longer victory. It was annihilation. The shinobi understood the truth immediately. They could no longer defend Iga. No strategy, no hidden trail, no surprise attack could stop an army of that size forever. So they changed their objective, not to save the land, but to save the knowledge. Families fled through secret mountain paths. Teachers carried handwritten scrolls. Children memorized techniques that could never be written down. Because they believed a village could burn, a castle could fall, but knowledge must survive. Many shinobi never escaped. Some died defending mountain passes, others disappeared into the forests, never to be seen again. History does not record all of their names, but their sacrifice ensured that the shinobi tradition did not disappear with Iga. After the destruction of Iga, stories spread across Japan. Some claimed the ninja had vanished. Others whispered they had simply become invisible again. A merchant swore he saw a shinobi walking through Kyoto disguised as a monk. A soldier insisted. A messenger beside him disappeared into the night without a sound. Were these stories true? Perhaps, perhaps not. But that is how legends are born. When history ends, imagination begins. And the less people knew about the shinobi, the more mysterious they became. Ironically, Nobunaga destroyed their homeland, but he could not destroy their reputation. In trying to erase the ninja, he helped create one of history's greatest legends. Among the survivors, one name would become more famous than all the others: a man whose loyalty would change Japanese history. His name was Hattori Hans. Unlike the myths, Hattori Hans was a real historical figure. He served Tokugawa Ieyasu, one of the most powerful leaders in Japan, when political enemies closed in and escape seemed impossible. Hans guided Ieyasu through dangerous mountain routes, using his knowledge of the former Iga network. That escape helped Ieyasu survive. Years later, Ieyasu would become Shogun, the ruler of Japan. History rarely remembers the guide, it remembers the king. But without Hattori Hans, Japan's history might have unfolded very differently. The world remembers the ninja as assassins, but historical records reveal something surprising. Their most valuable missions were often completed without killing anyone. So what exactly did the real ninja do? And why were they worth more to a warlord alive than dead? The answer changes everything. For centuries, the world believed the ninja existed for one purpose: assassination. It makes for a thrilling story. But history tells us that was only a small part of their work. The true value of a shinobi was information. Imagine you're a daimyo. Tomorrow, your army will march into enemy territory. You have 20,000 soldiers, hundreds of horses, months of supplies. One mistake could destroy everything. Now imagine, someone quietly enters the enemy's province. He counts the guards. He studies the roads. He discovers that a bridge has collapsed after heavy rain. He notices that food supplies are running low inside the castle. He returns, without anyone realizing he was ever there. That single report could save thousands of lives. That was the real mission of the shinobi, not to fight wars, but to shape them. Before they began, a real ninja rarely looked like the image we see today. He avoided attention. Sometimes he dressed as a traveling monk, other times as a merchant selling rice, a carpenter, a fisherman, even an ordinary farmer. The disguise wasn't just about clothing, it was about behavior. A merchant had to know how merchants spoke. A monk had to understand religious customs. A servant had to know when to lower his eyes. One wrong word, one unnatural movement could expose everything. That required something greater than courage. It required discipline. Hours of observation, days of preparation, weeks of patience. The mission began long before the ninja reached the target. People often ask, what was the ninja's deadliest weapon? The answer surprises many historians. It wasn't the sword. It wasn't the shuriken. It wasn't even the famous smoke bombs. Their greatest weapon was preparation. By the time a shinobi entered enemy territory, he already knew the terrain. He had studied escape routes. He understood guard schedules. He had planned for failure. And because of that, he rarely needed to improvise. Modern people admire confidence. The shinobi trusted preparation more than confidence. Because confidence can disappear, preparation remains. Some military victories never appeared in official battle records. Why? Because they happened without a battle. A false message delivered to the wrong commander. A rumor spreading through an enemy camp. A supply route quietly disrupted. History often remembers the generals, but sometimes the unseen actions of a single shinobi changed the course of an entire campaign. The shinobi understood something that many people still ignore. Information creates advantage. Preparation creates confidence. The loudest person is rarely the most dangerous. Often it's the quiet observer who changes everything. But as the ninja became more effective, their reputation grew beyond reality. People began claiming They could vanish into thin air, walk across water, see perfectly in complete darkness. Were any of these stories true, or did the legends become more powerful than the warriors themselves? In the next chapter, we'll separate myth from reality. When the wars finally began to fade, something unexpected happened. The Shinobi began disappearing. Japan entered a long period of peace under the Tokugawa shogunate. For the first time in generations, there were fewer wars. The skills that had once been essential were no longer in constant demand. Many former shinobi returned to ordinary lives. Their greatest strength had always been secrecy. So, when the age of war ended, they simply stopped being seen. Stories spread from village to village. One traveler claimed a ninja escaped by disappearing into a cloud of smoke. Another insisted. Children whispered that ninjas could walk across rivers or become invisible at night. The real shinobi relied on careful planning, knowledge of the terrain, and psychological tactics. To someone who didn't understand those tools, it looked like magic. But what seemed supernatural was often the result of preparation. The shinobi discovered something remarkable. If your enemy believes you are everywhere, you don't have to be everywhere. Imagine standing guard outside a castle, hearing a branch snap in the darkness. If you already believe the ninja are watching, every shadow feels alive. Every gust of wind sounds like footsteps. The battle begins, long before anyone draws a weapon. That was psychological warfare, and in many cases, it was more effective than violence. Centuries have passed. The castles have changed. The wars have ended. But one lesson remains. If you enjoyed uncovering the real history behind the ninja, subscribe to Warrior Legacy, because in our next episode, we'll uncover another forgotten chapter of history, where truth is often more unbelievable than legend. Until then, remember this: the greatest warrior is not the one who defeats the most enemies. It's the one who never stops mastering himself.